welcome to a very special version of Battle Kimchi, Germany versus Korea. When I tried it at week 3, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that it actually tastes different. Like, I can't wait to report this to you all. But by week 4, this little experiment may seem silly to many of you, but I really thought that, you know, instead of it being a really boring kind of your typical vegan kimchi recipe, we would try something different. And of course, the kings of fermentation are really, you know, the countries of Germany with their sauerkrauts and their pickles, and of course Korea with their numerous types of really delicious kimchi. So these are authentic pots from the country. So we're gonna go and talk a little bit more about those later. A lot of you guys had asked me about vegan kimchi recipes when I was doing my Korean soup special. And of course, a lot of kimchis, especially the ones in the stores, contain seafood. So it usually either has anchovies in it or shrimp paste. So I just thought, like, yeah, I would show you guys a really easy recipe, some substitutes for it. It's really easy to make, and it saves you a ton of money because usually kimchi is pretty expensive. So yeah, let's start off with the recipe first. We're really down to business here because I'm gonna put on my kimchi gloves. So what you guys need to know about kimchi is step 1 is to just salt the kimchi. And this is really, the process is really to just draw out the water in the kimchi, because later on you actually rinse off the salt. So it'll still provide a bit of flavor, but it's not going to be too crazy. So typically how I've learned to do this is you just kind of slice a little bit down the middle. You don't go through the whole cabbage, and then you kind of take your thumb, go in like this, and then you split the rest. And the reasoning behind that is now you get like really pretty and like organic looking leaves that you haven't really cut. Each of these like kind of little Chinese baby cabbages are about they're like about a pound. So each of those 2 liters should hold about like 2 pounds actually of cabbage. What we're gonna do is pretty much in between each leaf, you want to sprinkle in a little bit of salt, and I'll put the recipe all down below. Don't rip anything, but lift up another leaf, sprinkle more salt, lift up another leaf, sprinkle more salt, and that is the way that you would do things. So. This one's so tight. So step 2 is really making that spicy, really savory paste that you can put into your kimchi to flavor it. You don't actually have to make it like as spicy. Like, that's the good thing about making your own kimchi is if you don't really like spice, if you don't really like it too salty, you can adjust from there. Okay, so there's a couple parts to this. Let me just explain. Scallions, ginger, some people do an onion as well, and then garlic. These flavors are like the ultimate savory flavors of anything. I think that's what really makes like kimchi at its very base very, very delicious and very savory and very addictive as well. You have a couple of kind of ingredients that you add to it for flavor. So usually like they'll do like a Korean radish. I have a Daikon radish here, some carrots just for flavor. And then instead of sugar, a lot of people will put one of those Asian pears, or I've seen people do apple as well. And so that little bit of sweetness will help kind of like the bacteria and the fermentation grow as well, while balancing out some of the flavors. And then of course you have, we'll talk about these little baby jars as well later, but the Korean chili flakes, the Korean chili powder. It's not as spicy as normal chili powders. And then usually Koreans will put like a shrimp paste, anchovy paste, like some kind of thing in there to give it some additional kind of like umami or like nice flavors to it, while providing some additional salt as well. I'm gonna go with really like the ultimate thing is the Korean soybean paste, which I've said before is just so much more flavorful than miso. Like if you don't have this, use miso, but I thought let's go with, you know, a Korean kimchi. Let's go with the Korean soybean doenjang. Online, they actually have the doenjang that doesn't have, you know, all of like the preservatives and the MSGs and whatnot in there. And if you taste this, you'll have notes of like sweetness, saltiness, like savory craziness in here. So, and one more thing, not that seaweed best mimics the flavor of like fish or seafood, but it does add an additional kind of like a natural MSG in there as well as some good flavor. So if you like seaweed, that is something additional that you can add to it. So this is like a rice paste. What it does, on the one note, is that it makes this this like spicy paste very, very easy and very tactile, so you can spread it through all of the cabbage. But mainly what it is used for is, again, rice starches, they're forms of sugar, so it's going to help kind of further that lacto fermentation along by providing a little bit of this starch. Okay, so these guys have wilted down significantly. So now we're going to be smearing them with the paste that we're making. But I thought it would be the perfect time to talk to you guys about fermentation jars, which totally in my wheelhouse. What I thought would be really interesting is to divide up the portions between a German, you know, like your classic sauerkraut jar, and this one's really cool. It's from K&K Ceramic. I'll put a link to them down below, but what they do have, what the German jars do have, is they have these weights so that you make sure that everything is pressed down, nothing is exposed to air, and so like nothing can get like moldy or whatnot. So that's quite nice. This jar is also super cool, and why I bought it was because of the water seal lid. Like, that's like the coolest thing ever. What you do is you fill this lid. There's like a little channel with water, and then when you cover this, everything is airtight so that you don't get oxygen going inside that can make the fermentation go bad. But then, because I guess how gases work is the carbon dioxide from whatever is produced from the cabbages can come out, but none of the, the air and the things that can make it go bad can go in. So that's the German version. And that's really interesting because I'm going to describe the Korean onggi fermentation jar in a completely different way. So this onggi, and along with these baby ones, was sent to me by a company called Wuju Corporation, and I found them through Etsy. They were really nice to send these Korean, literally traditional Korean onggi jars to me. This one's from Joella Dough. If you look online for them, they are crazy expensive. The reason is because they take a really long time to make. All of these guys are handmade, and to be certified a traditional, actually a Korean onggi, it needs to be made by artisans in Korea that have been designated as these master potters that are creating this traditional form of how what people have used to ferment. These onggi pottery masters, there's not a lot of them around in Korea anymore. It's because the work is actually really hard, and a lot of people are choosing to not really be in the profession. And so because of that, all of these are very limited. Again, they're made by hand. And the primary reason that onggis are unique as opposed to other fermentation crock and jars is because onggis are known to be porous. They have micro pores through them, and they're known to be kind of breathable pottery. It's a very interesting process in terms of how they make it. The glaze, I'm nerding out here, but I wanted to tell you guys about onggis here. The clay that they use is actually super iron rich. There's a lot of different minerals in them, and so naturally in clay anyways, when you fire them, they have these little micro pores through them anyways. And usually what you end up doing is you glaze them in this like nice shiny glaze so that nothing can go through anymore. Well, what the onggis, what the Korean potters do is they actually have this special glaze that is made from, I believe, like leaf mold, among a lot of other things from the mountains and whatnot. And they're able to glaze this because you can see it is shiny. Like, there is a glaze on it. It is supposed to be, like this waterproof glaze. There is a glaze on this, but the unique thing about this glaze is that it continues to let those micro pores be present. And so it is a thought that, as the cabbage ferments, or as any kind of kimchi ferments, that, air and everything is kind of going in and out of this vessel. And the Koreans believe that it really aids in what we're doing here is lacto fermentation. So letting the lactobacillus bacteria kind of become the prominent bacteria in kimchi making. The interesting thing is, if you guys read into lacto fermentation, you'll know that it is supposed to be an anaerobic process. So it's supposed to be no oxygen in it. And so it makes it very, you guys are gonna have to read about it because, like, obviously, the Koreans have been doing this for hundreds of years, probably even more, in these crocks. And so they're saying that, lacto fermentation is supposed to be kind of better in this. I would have no way of really testing these two out. Obviously it's a little bit silly because if you've watched, like people like Manchi, they will make kimchi in, just like a plastic tub and then seal it and everything's fine. So you can make kimchi in anything. But it will be interesting for me. I will check in with these guys in a week, and then in 2 weeks, we'll do a taste test. I'll do a taste test for you guys. Can see that, I mean, there's going to be more liquid produced tomorrow, but there's usually not enough to cover everything. And so because we don't have a stone here, what a lot of people recommend is to take another cabbage leaf or some kind of leaf and cover it. And that should help with any, you know, yeasts or molds that grow on this. All right, so taste test time. What I ended up doing was I divided up the kimchi into two just the same bowls because I didn't want to know like which one was German and then which one was done in the kimchi onggi, and I thought that would affect my decision a little bit. It's actually been 4 weeks. So in terms of usage, I'll say that the German sauerkraut fermentation pot was just so much easier to use. I told you guys before that with the onggi, because it has those micro holes in it, sometimes when the kimchi is not submerged under liquid, that little bit can have some like white yeast on top of it. It's totally fine, but potentially your kimchi could go off that way. So what I ended up having to do with the Korean onggi was actually like every 2 or 3 days, I took a spoon and I made sure to push all of the cabbage underneath the liquid just to make sure that everything was wet with the liquid, because I think the liquid is what has the lactic acid in it. It's what has all of the good bacteria that's going to keep out all of the other stuff. You know, it has the acidity in there. So that's what I had to do for the Korean onggi. And then for the German one, I did it after week 1. I checked both of them. This was exactly the same because it had those stones to weigh it down. So I didn't even really check on this until week 3 again. I just kind of left it be. It was very, I'd say like it was very easy to manage. Like if you were worried about potentially like something going off because it was rising above the actual liquid, you don't really have to worry about it because of the weighing stones. Versus like with the onggi, I checked it every couple of days. Last week I cheated and I tried the kimchi already just to make sure that that we were on the right track. And it was interesting because I could tell they were 2 different flavors, which I was not expecting because I just thought that they would more or less be similar. One the biggest difference is the smell. So the onggi, I opened up more regularly, and of course the onggi has those little like micro holes in it that lets the kimchi breathe. In terms of smell, the onggi pot kind of smelled like a very like savory, very like well-rounded, like all of the ingredients had gotten a chance to, you know, mesh together and be friends, and it smelled really nice. The German fermentation crock, when I opened it, kind of had like a basic smell to it. Basic soap. Like a little bit like cabbage, like raw cabbage has this smell to it. Maybe I didn't open this one as much as I did this one. In terms of flavor, this one was very interesting, was keeping in mind that this is week 3. The kimchi in the onggi kind of tasted, it actually tasted really good already. It was slightly tangy. Again, following that smell, everything, all of the flavors seem to mesh together really well. The German pot, I felt like was maybe it was like a week behind in development. It wasn't as maybe tangy. The biggest difference was that the kimchi here tasted fizzy, effervescent. So that has happened to me actually before in reading a lot of kimchi forums. That's happened to a lot of people, and you don't have to be worried about it. Like sometimes in the stores they also have kind of fizzy kimchi, and that's just a buildup of, you know, carbon dioxide from the lactic acid, and sometimes that builds up in the leaves. Probably the only difference again is this has a lot of holes in it. Every 2 or 3 days I was pushing down the kimchi, so air was let out. And even though this one, again, is supposed to, that water seal is supposed to let the CO2 escape, I don't think it escapes as well, obviously. The taste of this, again, it felt like it was a week behind. Like the flavors weren't as prominent. So it would be interesting to kind of try out the ones now. Okay, so I'm fast forwarding through this one because what happened was I mistaken the German kimchi for what I thought was the Korean onggi kimchi, because I think by week 4 a lot of the flavors had evened out. I couldn't tell the difference. Final thoughts. At the beginning, I really thought that everything would come out the same, right? Because you can ferment in any kind of pot. When I tried it at week 3, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that it actually tastes different. Like, I can't wait to report this to you all. But by week 4, I just think the longer the fermentation time, the more they begin to even out in terms of flavor and taste. So what I'll say is this. I think if you wanted to bring it to a stage quicker where the kimchi tastes like mature, a little bit sour, a little bit nice, I think that actually the onggi is the way to go. I think the holes that come in and out, and at first I didn't want to say it, like I think that it does help in that like lactic fermentation, or if anything, it just helps the kimchi mature quicker. The downside to this, though, I mean, it's a gorgeous pot. Thank you, Wuju, again for sending this over. It's a gorgeous pot. The only downside to it, if you're using an onggi, is you have to remember every couple of days I took a spoon and I pushed all of the cabbage leaves down. I made sure that they were submerged, or even if they came back up, I made sure that they were they had been touched by the liquid down below, because it is the liquid that has the acidic substance, that has the lactic bacteria. So that's really the only thing that you have to remember, is with these, it requires a little bit more care time. Versus with the German pot. The German pot is really fun actually to use with the water seal. I thought it was quite nice. And yeah, after a certain point, like I checked it once and I was like, oh yeah, like nothing's really changed at all. It is those stones that I think make actually a difference. I actually think if you put the stones of this into this, I'd have to try it next time, but you might get like the the benefits of using an onggi and having like kind of a better, quicker fermentation, but then also get rid of the negatives of having it be more likely to form like little yeasts or molds on the cabbage bits that are untouched. I think if you're maybe newer to fermentation, or like you simply don't have time, like some people, they just want to, you know, set it and forget it, then this is going to be the one that you would go to, because like I honestly think I didn't have to open this one at all, like within the 3 or 4 weeks that I was fermenting it. People will say like lactic acid fermentation is supposed to be an anaerobic fermentation. It's supposed to not have any air, and that's what's supposed to happen. And yet I don't necessarily think that lactic acid is the sole thing that contributes to the flavor of kimchi. Like I think it's a mix of a lot of different things. And so like those micro holes that they've been using for, you know, many years, it does seem to work. They're, I forgot the exact size. This was the largest for Wuju. I'll put the information down below, and I'll put the link for both of these down below as well. But these are right around 2-liter pots. And usually the 2-liter pots, they make you believe that the 2-liter ones are like, oh, it's only for like a single person and it's not enough. 2 liters is huge. And if you own like a normal refrigerator, like a lot of the times refrigerators aren't really that tall, like each of the sections, they aren't that tall. So you're gonna have a really hard time fitting something that's like, 5 liters, 10 liters into your refrigerator. Because we're not putting these in the ground and whatnot. So I think 2 liters, let me just measure that for you guys. 3, 6, it's about 6 inches high. This one's a little bit higher, but yeah, so there's kimchi battle. How not fun. Both of them won. So I hope you guys all enjoyed the kimchi recipe as well as this kimchi battle. And if you want to see more recipes of kimchi, more kimchi battles with different jars, let me know what those jars are. I think there's like a clear one as well with like one of those, I think they used to use it for beer, where there's like a fermentation tube thing that comes up. So we can maybe try it with that. So I hope you guys all enjoyed. I will see you guys all again next time. Okay? All right, bye.